The first Nintendo game of 2024 is out. Another Code Recollection, the latest entry in a franchise that many fans thought would never come back. The original two Another Code games were squarely locked in the 7th generation of consoles, not even receiving re-releases on the Wii U. In fact, the second game, A Journey into Lost Memories, didn't even release in America and Australia, meaning for fans of those regions, the wait for a new game has been even longer. And while Another Code Recollection is technically a remake, so some may argue that it doesn't count as a new game, I would disagree. This feels like a new game in design, presentation, and even in the story itself. The first and most obvious indicator of this is how the game plays. The original Another Code used a top-down perspective, while the sequel used a fixed left-to-right camera perspective, with both having occasions of point-and-click style investigation scenes. But now Ashley has full movement capabilities, able to walk anywhere within a 3D environment, and interact with objects and the like in order to find hidden secrets or vital clues for story progression. It's a surprisingly big change, and one that fits better with modern sensibilities and expectations. It is also a change that I think is an improvement over both the original styles, and it feels very natural and a lot more engaging to have this kind of full control over the player character, seeing the world from their perspective. And it is a good perspective to have, as the presentation in this title is really solid. While I think you can tell that this game was made on a budget, Ashley's walk cycle in the first half is a bit stilted, and there are some awkward cutscenes that show the technical mishaps of the game, like here where Ashley casts a shadow but the piano she is playing does not. I ultimately don't care about this though, because the love and attention the developers put into this title seeps through as you play it. Two Memories on the DS used really nice 2D artwork to show its cutscenes and dialogue, whereas Recollection uses 3D models, and this has allowed Ashley to be more expressive, with more animation that help get across the tone of a scene, including very specific context-sensitive animations that you might only see once in the game, something that, surprisingly enough, you don't often see in bigger budget games. It really shows the dedication this team had to make this title look as good as they could. The models and artwork used to express the world of Another Code looks way better in Recollection than in past games, and I don't just mean this because it's in HD now. I think the change in art style and the new designs of the locations and characters are a lot more appealing. Ashley's new older design with the flannel shirt and shorts is probably the best of her 4 outfits, and she's not the only character to see a change like this. Many of the characters from across the two games have had surprising design alterations to look more modern, and honestly, they all look better than they did on the DS and Wii. The presentation all around is just a vast improvement, and it creates a very cozy game. Well, at least during its second half. A Journey into Lost Memories, despite being the newer title of the two, is easily the one that has benefited the most from the changes made in this remake, at least from a presentation standpoint. Lake Juliet is a visually lovely area, and it's far more enjoyable to explore this campsite than it is to explore the mansion of Blood Edward Isle. A big part of this is the camera. Now, when you first boot up the game, the camera is ungodly slow, but this is a very quick and easy fix in the settings, so I wouldn't call it a criticism of the game's quality. However, something I do have issue with is how close the camera is to Ashley. She takes up way too much of the screen, and it can make it quite hard to see everything around the player. Then when you add into the fact that most of the first half of this game is spent in small rooms and long thin corridors, the game starts to feel very claustrophobic, something the top-down view of the original game didn't suffer from. Thankfully, when I got to the second half of Recollection, this was no longer an issue. The camera zoom was still the same, and it's possible I feel this way because I just got used to the camera by this point in my playthrough, but I think a bigger reason is how open Lake Juliet is. There is more room to breathe at the campsite, and less situations where the camera is awkwardly pushing itself up against Ashley so that it doesn't end up behind a wall. Between Ashley's design, the better camera, and the general vibes, it's no surprise then that I found the second half of the game to be more enjoyable than the first overall. Which is a surprise when looking at the grand scheme of things, as I much preferred Two Memories over its Wii sequel back in the day, and now I greatly prefer Recollection to either of those two titles. Another Code Recollection is split into two parts, Two Memories and A Journey into Lost Memories. These were obviously two separate games originally, and so the split makes sense. There's also a 2-year time skip and change in location between the two. But Recollection doesn't allow you to pick one or the other to start with. Instead, it treats the games as one long narrative, transitioning immediately into the second half after the final chapter of the first is completed. It also peppers in new dialogue into the first half in order to add hints at events and plot points that were originally introduced within the sequel. In this way, Recollection has created one super long narrative for the players to enjoy, and I think it works very well. This does have some potential negative changes for fans of Two Memories, specifically that the optional story content in that game is now enforced. The original game made you uncover the mystery around Ashley and her father, but the mystery around Ashley's partner Dee was largely optional. You had to find that for yourself, which encouraged replayability. In this remake, this is no longer the case, and the player is forced to solve both mysteries to progress. I don't think this is a negative personally, and I understand why this change was made, as it makes more sense for the combined narrative being presented. The story of the sequel originally assumed players had found the best ending in the original, but that wouldn't make sense here, so they had to enforce it. Another reason for some of the changes in the story are the changes to the puzzles. Both Another Code games made heavy use of the gimmicks of the Nintendo DS and Nintendo Wii. Touchscreen, dual screen and motion control puzzles made up much of the original two titles' puzzles, but for Recollection most of these have been gutted and replaced. There are a couple of puzzles that have remained the same, like the piano, but for the most part many of the new puzzles now utilise simple button commands or logic questions. In most cases, the new puzzles are good replacements for the originals, but for a few of them, it doesn't quite capture the same magic. One that comes to mind immediately can be found in the second half of the game. In the original, you had to use a water testing kit and would shake the Wii Remote to stir chemicals and pour them into flasks, but that's all gone here, instead replaced with a scanning feature on Ashley's DAS, the in-universe not Nintendo Switch tablet that Ashley carries on her. The puzzle doesn't feel as fun here, which is a shame. There are also a couple of motion control puzzles that are just plain bad in Recollection, including the first puzzle of the game. Thankfully, these are few and far between, so it didn't bring down the experience for me too much. While the changes to the puzzles are understandable in most cases, what I don't understand are why so many puzzles were removed and just not replaced, especially from the second half of the game. A Journey into Lost Memories has a ton of puzzles that are just gone and replaced with nothing in Recollection. Puzzles where Ashley has to repair a flight of stairs to advance or investigate a series of pictures in order to find a clue to something are just outright not here anymore, with the solution already solved when Ashley arrives. I don't get this. It makes the second half of the game a lot shorter than it originally was, for seemingly no benefit that I can see. Honestly though, while I am confused at this decision, it didn't bring down my overall enjoyment of Another Code Recollection, and the new changes to the story are a lot more memorable and emotional than what the original had. Many of the changes work to give Ashley a stronger personality than she had in the original Japanese and European release, and other changes help to tie the two games together more neatly. While there might be less puzzles overall, all the other changes in gameplay, presentation and story are such a significant step up in quality to the original titles that I have no problem saying that this is the definitive way to experience the adventures of Ashley Mizuki Robbins and a must-play for adventure game fans. In an era of gaming where remakes and ports that should be simple have come out lackluster and disappointing, it's lovely to see a development team pour so much love and attention into a smaller title and make it the best it could possibly be. This is the way to play Another Code now, and I can only hope we get to see more from Ashley in the future. Thank you to Nintendo for sending us a copy of this game to play. I hope it does well, really and truly. I know Another Code as a series has a special place in many gamers' hearts, and I hope it can reach a new audience on the Switch. And that new audience could be you! So let us know if this game is one that you plan on picking up if you have not already. Up on screen right now are our $5 plus patrons, who you can join by following the link in the description below. But if you can't support with money, then that is fine. A free like and subscribe is all you need to commit in order to help you return to the source.